Hi, welcome back. Thank you for joining me, Anae. I appreciate that.
You're very, very welcome. I love playing with you.
I love playing with you too.
I
So
do.
we've talked about, your younger time when you had to drive your father because he was so sick to the hospital, and you got really upset because they wouldn't allow you to see him, and you were outside in the snowstorm throwing snowballs as hard as you could at the wall, at a blank wall, basically, because you were so frustrated. So, yeah.
Yeah. And, this morning, talking about that a little bit and getting our frame of reference here, I just realized that one of the things that my son particularly was afraid of was my cold anger.
Mm.
What if I introduced myself to cold anger, freezing
Yeah,
outside that hospital wall?
breathing.
Might be
That
a
might
thing
be
here.
it. Yeah.
Might be a
Out in the
thing here.
freezing cold, angry as heck,
Mm.
throwing snowballs at a hospital wall. I don't know. Yeah, I think that's the definition for cold anger right there.
Yeah. Blizzard,
Yep.
cold, pissy. Yeah,
Right.
maybe that could be the definition of cold anger.
I
All
would
right.
say so. So basically the next significant time in your life is around 13. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
we'd gone to some church. We'd gone to Whirlwind, Wyoming for some church function, and I don't recall. But anyway, mother had sent me outside to get something out of the car.
Mm.
And again, we're snowy, cold, freezing, icy streets, all this stuff.
Right.
And I run out, and probably without a coat, because I was very used to the cold and I love it. And
Oh
I
yeah.
still love the cold.
Right. I did the same thing growing up, and there's no
Yeah.
reason for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're going to do something quickly, yeah,
Hmm.
So I get outside and my shoes are very dry, and I stepped off the curb on ice
Oh.
and flipped, and down on the curb on my tailbone I hit,
Mm.
and I busted my ass. My AZZ.
Your
I busted it.
AZZ.
Yeah, and you don't know how bad it is. You just kind of
Literally, you
walk
did.
crooked for a
Yeah.
little while,
Right.
and we were we were very, very poor in Wyoming. Mother worked at the hospital, and I think dad's pay was $35 a week or something like that. So we lived off of mother's
Hmm.
salary, and pretty much, and whatever wild game that we got or fish. Mother sent me across the lake often to get the
Hmm.
fish for
Yeah.
either dinner or for cat food and dog food because we made
Right.
our own. And anyway, I got whatever it was and went back in and couldn't sit down.
Mm.
I was in so much pain. I did sit down because it, in my house, growing up with mother being a nurse at the hospital, she knew well how to take care of everybody, and it was her job. But you didn't get sick at home.
Mm. Yeah.
I didn't get sick at home because
Right.
the attention also was on my father because of his rheumatoid arthritis, and it was setting, and
Hmm.
again going down the street to get someone to come give him a shot of morphine
Hmm.
or something of that sort in the middle of the night. So
Hmm.
um, I didn't say anything.
And again, this comes back to swallowing pain
Right,
and
right.
swallowing emotions from way back when you were 3. You learned how to do that
Yeah, I
in the
did.
iron lung. Yeah.
Yeah, I sure
Yeah.
did. So I didn't ever say anything about it. Until, I mean, again, I was hurting. I think maybe I had to say I fell
Hmm.
because I was walking very laboriously and in pain, but just didn't talk about it, didn't say anything.
Hmm.
Nobody seemed to, dad got all the attention because daddy was very ill.
Hmm.
And I let that happen
Sure.
because my concern was my father too. So anyway, I rolled along, and I'm riding horseback across this pasture,
And this is how
and
long later?
oh, 3 or 4 months,
Oh, okay.
something like
All right.
that.
So
3 or 4 months.
significant. Yeah.
Yeah, because we weren't cold. I mean,
Yeah.
it was kind of sunny and all that good stuff. So 3 or 4 months afterwards, I'm riding horseback across this pasture and I'm by myself doing my own thing.
Like you
And
normally do.
oh, yeah. And so lightning storm hit.
Mm.
And I was in a pretty good speed, and lightning struck right by me on horseback. And of course, my horse went flying,
Yeah.
and I went flying
Hmm.
and hit the dirt in the electricity in the mud and hit the dirt with rolling as fast as I could, having no idea where my horse was, and back feet right here.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I'm kind of laying there pretty well stunned and thinking I might be dead. And
Yeah.
maybe a piece of me wished I was,
Are you
'cause
right?
what a way to go. But
She died with a horse electrical storm and a, yeah, that would be a wonderful headline now. Not that I was wishing that on you, but
yeah, right. I've made some kinds of, the news reports and the news headlines really are interesting in what they say and what they don't say. You got
Mhm.
to read the article because they get them all jumbled up.
Yeah, they do.
Um, so anyhow, again, don't tell nobody what happened. Not knowing that I had begun to have this, I did know it, but I
Yeah,
wasn't saying anything.
sure.
But from the fall, I had begun to have this growth take
Mm,
off on my rear end,
mhm,
right at the base of the tailbone and up in. I'm up higher
mhm.
above my tailbone. So virtually I was growing a third cheek, butt cheek.
Wow.
Well, it tore open
Oh,
falling.
mm,
And in the mud and all of this kind of stuff, it began to get infected.
yeah.
And it created quite a problem.
Mhm.
And mother decided that because now I have to tell,
Well, yeah, you don't have a
because,
choice. Yeah.
right, I have to tell.
They're gonna notice soon enough
So
when you can't
mother
walk.
got this big ass syringe. I like that word today. This big syringe and started drawing fluid off of it and keeping the fluid off of it. And probably gave me penicillin
Yeah.
to ward off infection and all. But it stayed growing and it stayed growing and growing till um, finally she had to take
She
me to
had
the
to.
doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to do something about it. And because it got quite large.
Mhm.
Well, so they decided to surgically remove it. And it was called a pollinoid cyst. And those things are usually always there. And it was activated and started growing by the falling and the
Right, by the
and
trauma. Right, right.
and the trauma and the infection. So they get in there. And now I become another one of those medical, except it wasn't said anything about it up when that happened. It was years later that we go, oh, well, when
Yeah.
Dr. Perharts worked with me in his little split glasses and said, does anybody ever write all this shit down about you? He said, you ought to be dead.
Yeah.
Emotionally, you ought to be dead. Physically, and you ought to be dead. Mentally, you ought to be in a hospital somewhere. Has anybody ever written this down? I said, no, no one's ever even bothered to ask me all of this until I met you. So that was Andrea Puharich, which I privileged in working with.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm on the table, on stomach down, on a breathing machine. I'm 13 years old and I was very shy. And
Mm.
it was pretty scary. About 7.5 hours that it took for them to get all that out.
Oh my
Quart
gosh.
fruit jar full of hair,
Wow.
a tooth, an
Wow.
eyeball,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was growing another human being. Well, it's not called that. I mean, it's not a human being, but it's a
Well, and that's where we found out that well, no, that wasn't where we found out. It was when I had my children that we found out that I do not have a woman's pelvic floor. I have no cartilage to move. It's like a man's.
mhm,
So later now, in the phenomenon
mhm.
of life itself, there is the statement that sometimes you emulsify your own twin,
Yeah,
and that those were the pieces and da da da,
right.
Well, mystery. One more mystery. So I had to go to the hospital. From school, I would walk across from the high school over to the junior high school, whichever one I was in at that time.
Yeah,
Well, I was
yeah,
in both of them because I went to high school for math, and then I would walk over every other day, and it had to heal from the inside out. So they
yeah,
had to remove the packing just a
right,
little bit at the time and all.
right.
So I wore a wad of packing between my legs for quite a long time, and still looked like I had a third
But
butt cheek. Yeah. Embarrassing. Real embarrassing.
and this is a time at 13 when it's early teens, people, you're going through all of the changes. Did you get teased a lot? I mean, was there a teasing happening at your school at that time or?
Well, yeah, I mean, that that was a time I'm walking across from the high school to the junior high school at the time. I got in really big trouble for this, but I was teased. I was set apart
Mhm,
because I was different. I was the preacher's kid.
mhm.
Um, I later found out the whole football team had bets on who was going to get to me.
Oh, wow.
And I was so unusual that if I walked down the hall, kids would quit talking until I left, till I
Yeah,
went on by.
yeah, yeah.
So there was it was huge. I mean,
Mhm.
the lack of acceptance and the desire for acceptance was just unbelievable. And
Yeah,
yet I was extremely shy. This took me into never having to have PE
yeah.
because I didn't want to go to the locker room ever.
Right, right.
But at one moment, I remember I worked in the library a lot. I loved
Mhm.
it. And I came across from the high school to the junior high staircase. On the outside there was a fireplace that we could go up to the back end of the library, and I had my arms just loaded with books. I could hardly see
Mhm.
over them.
Yeah.
Snow on the ground, deep snow, and this kid comes running up to me and shoots me with a water pistol, and I'm trudging through the snow.
Right,
Well,
right.
I wasn't too happy about that.
Sure.
Well, we get inside, and it's one of those days where we had a dress code. If it was 30 degrees, if it was freezing, we could wear pants to school, but we had to change into a skirt.
After, once you got inside.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So then also, if it was below zero, we could wear pants all day.
Mhm.
Well, we like those days, it was
Sure,
like
yeah.
fun. But we come back in, and I'd already, I'm going up the stairs from the first floor to the second floor, and this same kid comes in, just yeah, 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 yeah. And he's a big, tall kid. I don't even remember his name. But I turned around, and he was just messing with me.
Yeah,
And I
he was
turned
just being
around
a
and
teen.
just naturally elbowed him right as he was taking a step and knocked him off balance. And he fell to the bottom of the stairs, broke his leg.
Yeah.
Well, I got a whooping on that one
Mm.
because I was told, if you get in trouble in school, you get in trouble again at home,
Yeah,
no matter what. So I
right.
had no word. I had no say in the house, and it didn't matter what happened to me.
Yeah.
I was
Mhm.
going to be punished regardless.
Whether you
For
were in the right or the wrong,
Didn't matter.
it didn't matter.
Didn't matter.
Yeah.
It didn't
Justice
matter.
justice was not part of that
Well, the truth
equation.
wasn't there
And the
either.
truth, yes, and the truth was
Yeah.
not part of the equation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for a Sagittarian, holy beepy Batman.
That was tough.
Oh man.
Yeah. So that was that established that whole incident established something that we'll later talk about from just 8 years ago.
Mm,
That started a
yeah.
whole new episode of stuff there. So,
Yeah.
the body has an incredible way of remembering all of those things.
So let's circle back to how did it heal? When did it, were you finally, because I'm assuming after that surgery and you got through some of that part and, they took it out and you healed from the inside out. About how long do you think that took you to heal from that? Well,
Oh, it was probably 3 months
physically.
before it closed up. I
Yeah.
mean, 3 months before it all closed up.
Yeah.
And my dad panicked because he saw it, and that panicked me because I didn't want Dad to see my rear end.
Well, sure.
And all the bones were showing.
Mhm.
Your bones are right there and
Right.
very much alive. And I found out scar tissue later. Scar tissue, it had grown underneath my sacrum and had actually started to pull on my right leg.
Wow.
And then I had therapy done on that in probably 10 years ago to
Hmm.
release a bunch of the scar tissue that was still, that
Part of
had come
that.
up underneath
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
not knowing. I mean, the body has a remarkable way of knitting itself back together, and
Right.
sometimes it doesn't stop.
Right.
So, scarring and building around it can be, the adhesion process and so forth is just the over ability of the body to try to heal. So it when I went through menopause,
Hmm.
because it being in the nervous system there and everything. Plus, I know that, I mean, I asked chiropractor after chiropractor, why was my pelvis going really weird during
Right.
menopause? Only to find out that even went back to polio, is that the paralytic polio creates a nerve warp around the brain stem, and half of it dies actually. And
Wow.
then when you go through hypothalamus process of menopause, my pelvic floor went nuts
Yeah.
and my leg hurt. And
Right.
my left leg was in pain because it was so hitting the ground in
Right.
such a different
Right.
manner
Right.
that I was out of balance all the time.
Hmm.
And another one of those places where things happen and we have no idea all of the connections way on down the line. you
See
know
that, yeah, that was what I was going to ask you about too, is the whole, physical trauma happening at a significant youth, um, from the time you were quite small and then at 13 and in that teen, early teen stage of, our hormones going crazy anyway, and then emotionally being, internalizing a lot of emotional parts.
well, again, I kept it secret,
Yeah, and keeping those
because
things
I mean,
secret.
you it's back to, it's damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Right. Well, and then
And
creating a situation that later in your life,
well, and I
those,
got in trouble all the time. I mean,
yeah,
I, mother was always after me, as suspicion that if I was 5 minutes late getting in the house from being dropped off at the bus, she thought I was messing around with somebody behind somebody else's house or
wow,
something. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
she was attacking all the time.
sure.
And, and along in there, it was, yeah, along in there was perhaps the next story. And
I think so. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, this is
yeah.
great. Thank you for another glimpse into your life. I appreciate that.
Well, and forming. I mean,
Yeah.
we my life has been full
Hmm.
of lots of incidences,
Hmm.
and they are not only forming but transforming. So
Yes, yes, very much
hasta
so.
for today.
Hasta for today. Thank you, honey.
You're welcome.